right. Go ahead and get rolling. You ready, Brendan?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, excellent. Great. Well, thanks, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order for today, Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022, for the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee, or WRAC. I'm Andy Pease. I'm serving as the chair. Ray Dienzo is the vice chair here somewhere, and Brendan Clark is our secretary and staff member extraordinaire. So thank you for all of that. How do you want to do this, Brendan? Do you want to call roll and then we'll and see if we missed anyone?
Yeah, that's a good idea. And we'll just go, I'll kind of go by the groups real quick. So the supervisor districts 1 through 5, I don't see anybody. Is anyone here member or alternate member for the supervisory districts?
That is discouraging.
Yeah, I don't think so. I know District 1 is having some changes, so those will be effective by our next meeting.
Okay.
So, okay, good. Just wanted to check there. I didn't see anyone. Okay, for our at-large, I thought I saw Christine, and I know Eric Greening and David Chipping are here. Any other at-large, agriculture, development, or environmental at-large besides
Fiora,
Christine?
you can just unmute and holler if you're here. And
I don't think so. Okay.
Okay.
For our resource conservation districts, is Linda Chipping, Kevin Piper, George Kendall, or Tom Mora here?
See Linda.
Oh, I see Linda. Yes, thank you.
George is here.
Thanks, George. Perfect. Okay, great. Let's see. I do not see Atascadero Mutual, California Men's Colony.
Hey, Brandon. This
Yes.
is Jamie with Atascadero Mutual Water Company.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks,
Glad you can make
Jamie.
it.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So yeah, CMC, Camp Slow,
Muted?
Farm
Thanks.
Bureau. I see Steve and Brent. Thanks for being here. No, Cuesta Golden State Water. I've got Mark. Thanks, Mark. I see you here.
Everyone.
Hey, Mark.
Shandon San Juan Water District. I think Steven said he wasn't going to make it, and they're also having a member change, which will be effective by our next meeting. And then Estrella El Palmar Creston Water District. Lee, I see you. Thanks for being here. For our cities, I see Lon. And let's see, City of Atascadero, I didn't see Charles. Grover Beach, Robert, I see you. Thank you.
Here.
City of Morro Bay, no Laurel today. Okay. No, and I don't see Christopher Kirk from Paso, Marsha or Sheila from Pismo Beach. Nope. And then Andy, I've got you for City of Slow. For our CSDs, I see Ray from Cambria, Ron from Los Osos, Ed from Napomo, Shirley on the phone for Oceano, and Deborah Logan for Templeton. Any CSD representatives that did not hear their name?
Okay.
So I got 17 then, so we do have a quorum.
Okay.
This is
Awesome.
Alan Duckworth, the fifth district. I'm trying to get in on Zoom and not making it, but I'm on the telephone.
Oh, sorry about that, Alan. Well, thanks for calling in, and yeah, we'll be, spoiler alert, we'll be meeting in person again soon. So hopefully that will be that'll work out better for you. So thanks for being here. So Andy, I've got 18.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other members or alternates that we haven't called that want to register? Let us know you're here. Okay.
Andy and Brendan, I'd just like to let you know that Josh, we're going to have a member change for Golden State. So I'll reach out to you, Brendan, and start that process. Our next meeting, we'll have a new member for Golden State.
Okay,
All right.
sounds great. Yeah, just a letter. I think it was a letter from you even last time. So will be perfect. Whatever that same format was. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Terrific. And then usually if we have a minute here, if folks who are either new to the group or want to say hi, there's kind of a lot of us today, 37 folks on the call. Thank you so much for being here. So if anybody does want to speak, it would be most helpful if you raise your hand using the reactions bar at the bottom of the Zoom, and then I can call on you and you can unmute. If you're on the phone, you don't really have that, so just say something and we'll catch you. Is there anybody else? Is there anybody who'd like to introduce themselves, say hi? Blaine. Oh, Blaine.
Hi there, this is Blaine Reilly. I'm the Director of Groundwater Sustainability for the County of San Luis Obispo, and this is the first time I've had an opportunity to join this group. So just wanted to introduce myself and tell you I'm looking forward to being part of it. Thank you.
That is awesome. I guess we don't have a formal introduction. Would it be all right if you just took a minute and kind of talked about the scope of your work? What's in your purview and kind of what you're up to in general?
Sure. I was brought on board in the middle of November, so I'm just getting in the process of getting the department up and running. It's a brand new department. Transitioning the responsibility for the 6 managed groundwater, Sigma managed and other managed groundwater basins in the county over to my department. And really the main mission is to move forward with the implementation of the various sustainability plans and other basin plans to get projects and management actions moving along and get the basins sustainable. So that's, I guess, it in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate having you here, and I'm sure we'll pepper you with questions at some other time.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else want to introduce themselves, say hi? If not, we will keep going. All right. First order of business is to make sure we're allowed to meet. We need to consider adopting a resolution regarding virtual meetings. That's in response to in alignment with AB 361. This is likely our last one, at least for now, entirely via Zoom. But we do need a resolution to move forward with that. Any discussion on this item or comments, questions from the public?
Eric Greening with a couple of thoughts. First of all, I'm glad to, at the website, it actually says to expect Zoom meetings through June. And since most other bodies are going into in-person meetings, I think it would behoove us to join them if we're able to keep a virtual option for those who don't feel comfortable in crowds. That's good, but there are so many advantages to being in person and together. With that said, I would like to request that we try to get into SLO City Hall and have the windows and doors open when we meet. I think there's better opportunities for cross ventilation there, and it just until we've totally settled from pandemic into endemic, I think that extra little belt and suspenders might make a difference in people's confidence. Outdoors is obviously the best, but the logistics would be a little tricky. And I think San Luis Obispo City Hall has a better potential for genuine cross ventilation.
Great, thanks, Eric. I think we'll probably continue the discussion specific about future agenda under item 8 for future agenda items, and we can talk about when we're meeting next and under what format.
With that, I will formally move then that we make the findings. We're still under a state emergency, health emergency. So I will move that we make the findings so we can continue with our meeting.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? So Greening.
I'll second that, Robert.
Robert, awesome, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
He's here, yes. great. And because typically we would do a roll call vote, but because we are a big body, we're assuming yeses, but now and then I'll make an opportunity for abstain and no. So yeses is default. And now anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. We're assuming 18-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, what?
I was just saying thanks.
Oh, yeah. Okay, moving on to the approval of the January 5th meeting minutes from January 5th, 2022. Any comments, corrections, concerns on those meeting minutes? I'm seeing none, so I will entertain a motion to approve those.
I move to approve the minutes, please.
All right, Ray D'Anzo makes the motion.
This is Deborah Logan. I'll second that motion.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Okay, same thing. We're assuming all in favor, and then here's your opportunity. Any opposed to approval of the minutes? Any abstentions?
Eric Greening had a technical difficulty trying to join last time, which is why I so look forward to being in person.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Eric. So Eric's abstaining.
Tascadero. This is Jamie. I'll abstain for Tascadero Mutual Water Company. We didn't attend.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. So
And
2 abstentions.
Councilmember George also
Yeah,
abstained.
okay. Thanks,
And
Lon.
George, great. Thanks.
And Eric. Okay.
Okay, motion carries. Thanks, everyone. All right, we got through it. Whew. So now we are on to the main event, one of our 2 main events. I'm super excited about these. So first is to receive a presentation from the Regional Water Quality Control Board regarding PFAS and per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Okay, that was my attempt. All right.
I think first order, the water board will teach us how to pronounce it all. So I'm really, this is like 101 class. So I'm really looking forward to it as well.
We know we want to know about them, but yeah, help us out. Okay, we'll hand it over. Thank you so much.
So you should be able to share your screen, Wendy, or if someone from your team is presenting also. So
Yeah,
should be good to
that'll
go.
be, well, thank you very much for your time today. I've got about 15 slides or so. I'll try to run through them fairly at a good pace, but please interrupt me if you've got any questions. Actually, I work at the State Water Resources Control Board. So I actually sit at the state building and in Sacramento, and Jennifer Epp is, as you know, is in your local region there. So what I plan to do is provide you kind of an overview. I heard we'll need a little bit of what are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances and kind of what we're doing across the state. Kind of a little bit of information on what we're seeing, some kind of next steps, and then I'll open it up for questions. So as I said before, feel free to interrupt me. And okay, so here we go. We're going to take the world trip for PFAS. All right. So per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, it's always been known, it's been called PFAS. And so what we are getting to know about these compounds is that we're aware of them in the late 90s, early 2000s, really were our awareness, but these substances have been manufactured since the 1940s. There are quite a few of them out there. That's a very broad class of these chemicals or compounds, and they're important in certain industries, and we have them in our homes today. because they are essentially manufactured with these bonds, this chlorine fluorine bond, and they have multiple chains, what we call chains to them. So you'll see multiple chlorine and fluorine bonds, and we'll have either, in some cases, a different kind of head to them, and we call it a head and a tail. And so essentially they're resistant to heat, water, and oil. So they have a lot of applications for us in our consumer products, our industrial applications and such. And why they're such kind of a bugger is this chlorine fluorine, the carbon fluorine bond is really tough to break. It is one of the strongest bonds in nature. And unfortunately, most of us have been exposed to PFAS. And the two most commonly studied are the ones that are on this slide on the right-hand side. It's perfluorooctane, sulfonic acid, PFOS. I hardly ever say the whole thing out loud. We always say the acronyms. And PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid. And the octo has to do with 8. So you'll see eight bonds there. So as I mentioned, our awareness is just beginning to really kind of formulate around these, but we do know that there are a lot of them out there. And the US EPA is busy trying to catalog them. They're up to about 5,264 of these chemicals. And currently right now we have analytical methods to test for them only in drinking water right now. And that's either a list of 18 or 24 of these compounds. And they are based upon the ones that are most highly studied. And that's the ones that are currently being analyzed for right now. For non-drinking water, there is a draft method coming out from the EPA to analyze up to 40, but we need to get to a point where we're just not going to be able to analyze for all of these, right? And so that's where we are across the world trying to understand what is the best way to kind of deal with all these compounds. So if you were not aware of PFAS, these chemicals are, as I mentioned, widely used. One of the main uses of them and that we're seeing in the environment today is part of the firefighting foams for chemical firefighting, Class B foams. So at airports, military use these foams, and they have a very important use. I mean, they are essentially their purpose is to snuff out a fire, and they work very, very well. They are also used on treatments for carpets and rugs and your clothing that you have in your homes, textiles. They are used because they're heat resistant and oil resistant. Teflon is a common name for a PFAS chemical, nonstick cookware. It is used in metal plating. It's used in the tech industry, and it is used on food packaging. And the reason why, for the oil and grease resistance, so that your food does not seep into the container. So those are some of the common kind of uses, but some of the things that are progressing in the state of California, we're currently banning PFAS containing firefighting foams. We're getting no Home Depot, Lowe's are not supposed to be importing any more carpets and rugs with stain resistance on them, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of efforts going on in the state in regards to removing these sources of PFAS from our consumer products and goods and uses.
And specifically on food packaging.
So PFAS is a concern because they actually can affect human health and ecological and the aquatic arena. So these are some of the known information in regards to the health effects that can happen. And you can read them right there. So there's so many studies going on today in regards to these compounds. You're more than welcome. There are documentaries and others. There's a motion picture called Dark Waters that's out there if you're interested, that you can get on Netflix if you want to learn more, because we are fortunate here in the state of California where we were not a location for a primary manufacturer of these compounds. All of that was happening on the East Coast, and there's been a lot of litigation and very unfortunate things that have happened over on the East Coast, where it has really severely impacted some people's health and livestock. So because of these concerns that we have, that we know that specifically most of the studies been on PFOA and PFOS, PFOA and PFOS, we know that these compounds are they are very persistent in the environment. I told you those bonds don't break. They happen to be very mobile. So that makes them widespread. And because of their toxicity, they bioaccumulate. They also have the potential to be cancerous, and there are also non-cancer and developmental effects having to do with some of these compounds. So because of that, the state of California has been investigating PFOS. And so, as I mentioned, we are not a location of a primary chemical manufacturer, which is great for us. That means we don't have those very high levels that can come along with having a manufacturer and the impacts from those. But we get the secondary impacts in regards to the chemicals coming into the state, either being used as part of a manufacturing process, as I mentioned in metal plating process. Chromium plating specifically uses a misoppressant that has PFOS in it. It could be used as a component in an industrial product like the Class B firefighting foam. The acronym there is aqueous film forming foam. It's also called AFFF. And it is in our consumer products, as I have shown before. So those waste streams, those things are getting into our environment, and they are in our landfills, and it's getting in our wastewater. So PFOS, fortunately, is we focused our efforts on those locations where we knew from other investigations across the country where PFOS was most likely to be located. And so we started out looking at airports because of the aqueous film forming foam. That kind of use of the firefighting foams is also at refineries and bulk fuel terminals because of their emergency response actions, and they need to have fire suppression activities. The chrome platers, as I mentioned, but also those that are secondary receivers of waste that has PFOS in it, which are our wastewater treatment plants and our landfills. And but not least, the military is also involved. They are doing their own separate investigations, each military branch. That's the green circle. And they are investigating all of their uses of PFOS in the state. So in combination with the Division of Drinking Water, and I sit in the Division of Water Quality, we went out and we strategically we started out with the airports and landfills. So we issued investigative orders to those airports and landfills for actual site investigations at those locations, in combination with the Division of Drinking Water, issuing orders to public water systems that have wells within a 1 to 2 mile radius of those locations. And so that was our way of both understanding what was going at the site and trying to protect and understand what's going on in the public water system. Since then, we've moved on to collecting data at the chrome platers, the POTWs, and currently right now, the bulk fuel terminals and refineries are underway. So this is a map kind of showing you all the locations of all the investigations that are going on across the state for PFAS. So this is kind of a very generalized table that kind of gives you an idea of what the data that we're seeing. And so based upon kind of, I put the media on the left, soil, groundwater, stormwater, surface water, sediment, and wastewater, and those locations that we are actually collecting data at. So we knew that AFFF, that aqueous film forming foam, is a very concentrated component. PFAS is one of its, that is its function. It's within that foam. And so we expected that we were going to see significant concentrations there. And so you can see that we are seeing them in soil and groundwater and stormwater. And mostly, you know, at large airports, as you would expect, San Francisco, Oakland, LAX. That is not something that we were not surprised about. It just required the initiation to order and to investigate. And all of those locations are continuing to investigate beyond determining the extent of the impact. We're fortunate so far that there aren't any public water supply wells that are being impacted by any of them. All of our airports are on the coast, as you know, and so, you know, it's not a drinking water source area. But other areas where we're seeing, you know, some other concentrations at chrome platers, you can see that to moderate concentrations, landfills. In the wastewater treatment plants, we just completed, they just completed 1 year of sampling, 4 quarters for influent and effluent wastewater, biosolid sampling, and those wastewater treatment, or those POTWs, the wastewater treatment plants that had groundwater monitoring. And at those locations, we are seeing not much coming in the influent and effluent, but where we are seeing PFAS mostly is in groundwater. And that's probably because of historical activities and historical deposition coming in and out of those plants. So that kind of gives you an idea, but we also know we've got some gaps, and we're going to continue to investigate and gather more data in regards to stormwater. There's some areas there we need to understand better, and surface water and sediment sampling. So I wanted to throw out the maximum contaminant level. So the MCL, the state of California is in the process of what would you call, determining a public health goal for PFOA and PFAS. And so the public health goal, once it becomes adopted by the Division of Drinking Water, it will be used to formulate a maximum contaminant level. And so right now we have a draft public health goal, and they'll be hopefully finalizing that by the end of the year. And you can see those two numbers down there in the orange. For PFOA, it's 0.007 parts per trillion. And I think that's something we need to also talk about. We are talking about parts per trillion for these compounds, which is really, really low. And so I think what that really needs to tell you is that, you know, they're not gonna futz around with these things. These are not, you know, like, you know, dioxin and furans, you know, they are not good for us. And so So that is a really low number, and it's probably going to change, and it'll probably change. But I think it just is indicating how what health effects that are really happening here when you have PFOA involved. So essentially, the MCL for PFOA and PFOS, we are on a track around 2025. Is approximately where we are. We think that an MCL for those two will be developed. So what's next? A couple other things in regards to data gaps. We are assessing and we'll be assessing other areas for drinking water. We want to understand kind of in septic dominated communities, whether there is an effect on public drinking water from septic, from our own home and residential use. We are going to be starting a study in regards to collecting water from surface water intakes along a couple major reaches of rivers in the state of California that are being used for drinking water supply, part of kind of that surface water thing. We are going to be working within our own programs in order to figure out areas to add PFAS for future for ambient monitoring programs. I know that there are regional monitoring programs and figuring out the best locations in order to get that done. We are supporting the regional boards, the state water board, myself and others on the team in regards to finding other significant areas where PFAS could be a source. And we are under the undertaking to try to really understand what the total PFAS is in regards. I had mentioned those analytical methods only, provide a few of the compounds. We know the world is a lot bigger. And so trying to utilize actually the EPA, their Office of Research and Development, to help us kind of understand what that total PFAS is, and trying to work towards a way of really managing these better to investigate them and to monitor for them. I wanted to throw in a slide regards to EPA. EPA has a strategic roadmap. And if you have a chance to take a look at that, the EPA in this current administration is really going forth and has trying to provide a lot of information and trying to moving forward in regards to understanding PFAS themselves. The EPA may have a draft MCL for PFOA and PFAS by the end of this year. We'll see if that happens. And maybe a final one by 2023. So that would be quite. They're working on the revising the wastewater effluent limitation guidelines. We're going to probably see something draft by the end of the year in regards to that. They are really moving forth to propose NIPID's monitoring requirements in order at facilities where PFAS is being used to eliminate them from the wastewater stream. There are analytical methods that they're working on. They may designate PFOA and PFAS as a surplus hazardous waste. And there is a monitoring program, sampling program the EPA does for unregulated contaminants, and they've added several PFAS compounds to that. They've already been asking water systems to sample a few years ago, and they're going to continue another effort. They call it UCMR 5. That's going to start in 2023. So public water systems, both public and small water systems, will be sampling for PFAS in 2023 and 2025 in the state of California. If you are a data geek, we have all the data that has been collected, that map that had all those locations of all those investigations are in this tool. So the GeoTracker PFAS mapping tool is available. It's on the water board's PFAS website. You can play with that your will if you're really interested in looking at the data. So I'm going to end it with just kind of a more information slide. I really appreciate your time today. I'd be glad to help answer any question you have. Hopefully I didn't go over. I know that was a lot of information all flung at you at once. So I will leave it there, and you're more than happy to get a hold of me if you have any more information. Thank you.
Great. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was, I think, exactly what we were needing and looking for, and I really appreciate that. If we do have just a couple minutes for questions, so you can either type them in the chat or raise your hand. David Tipping, although we're, of course, as a body, we are looking at the water resources. So I think thinking about the groundwater and surface water, et cetera, is super impactful. But he does ask, what about plastic water bottles and kind of the personal PFAS loading, things that we are putting into our bodies, regardless of our water sources.
Yeah, that's always a concern. Even there's several studies out there that have gone out and sampled water that you get off your shelf. And so it's always a possibility that there could be PFAS in bottled water, depending upon the source of it. Like I said, we are measuring down in the parts per trillion range. And so that's always a possibility, but it's probably not a significant one.
May I asked the question on chat, Dave Chipping here. NPR just had a program on this, and they said that the screw top, we're not talking about the store bottles, the screw top bottles, after 2 days have an enormous plethora of chemicals showing up in them, including the PFAS. That becomes a non-point source, doesn't it? Because you're going to urinate into the system. So it seems that controlling that would be most effective than looking underneath airports.
Agreed. Yeah, well, it's all about the impact. The concentrations at airports are having to do with AFFF are significantly higher, sir. And so those we've got, those got to go away. And so, but you're right, those, bottled water affects you as well. And so we are seeing it in the wastewater treatment plants. The study or the investigations that are happening is that, there are a lot of wastewater treatment plants that are 100% residential and commercial, and we're definitely seeing PFAS coming in and out of those plants from there. So, but I think the one thing you got to keep in mind is that not necessarily all of these compounds are toxic to us. There's a lot of studies going on to try to figure out which ones are actually going to affect us. But the problem is there's just so many, because the chemical industry isn't allowed to run free, so to speak.
Thank you. Eric, did you want to ask yours, or did that kind of answer it in terms of the sludge?
I typed in another big one, but yeah, relative to the mention of wastewater and effluent usually not containing much, does it end up in the sludge or the biosolids? And what is the regulatory regime for dealing with that? And then the other question relative to food containers, we've had a lot of attention to polystyrenes, but are there other food containers that are dangerous for this and others that are not, so that we should be migrating toward the use of particular ones and abandoning others? And do you interface with integrated waste management authorities? Anyway, that's a lot of questions, but you did give an incredible.
Well, let me start with the first one, and then maybe you'll have to ask me again on the second one. So our current wastewater treatment processes on these molecules don't necessarily they pass through. That's an issue on these, and some of I mentioned those chain links. The longer ones are usually retained, and they get shorter and shorter. those ones pass through. So unless you have reverse osmosis, RO seems to be very effective in regards to moving, but all we're doing is moving these compounds around. So if it's not in the wastewater, if it's in RO, then it's in the brine, and then the brine is getting dumped into the ocean. So it's not actually breaking, it's not really getting rid of it. The only way to really get rid of PFAS that we know so far is incineration, and it has to be at a very high temperature. And that does not happen in the state of California. So that's where we are so far. And there is so much, as I mentioned, studies, especially the DOD, have been spending a lot of money trying to understand, because they are impacted a lot in regards to the AFFF, and trying to find an economic and environmentally safe destruction for that.
Wow, thank
And
you.
I don't remember the second question, so.
And I'll actually, because I know we're running out of time, and I wanted to chime in with Willie's question as well. How expensive is the testing with so many possible compounds to test for? Are we better off waiting for the state to complete the first round of testing to kind of winnow it down? Or, you know, what do we as a whole group of water purveyors, et cetera, what's our best steps?
Yeah. You know, as for non-drinking water, you know, the EPA is going to come out with their method. And so what we're finding out that group of compounds that they are part of that method, and what we're analyzing seems to be a good base. Does that make sense? It gives you an idea what those compounds that are so far that were coming in, that were being used a lot. They've been phased out because the EPA said you can't use PFOA and PFOS anymore, and so they phased out and created these other ones. But so that seems to be a good base. But yes, we are currently trying to understand that total idea, and there are some non-target analytical methods out there the EPA is actually working on too. So it is kind of one of those things where you might want to know, or you might want to wait. So, but the state has not yet issued any guidelines or anything in regards to that. The only thing that all the activity right now is for drinking water. And so there are notification and the response levels for that, and a maximum contaminant level that will be coming out.
Awesome. Well,
Andy?
Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
Could we do Steve's question too? He asked one pretty early on as well.
Sorry, thank you.
No worries. Yeah, we'll make sure you saw that one.
Thank you. I did not. What does a CERCLA hazardous waste designation mean in practice? CERCLA. I don't
Yeah,
know
that allows, it provides a lot of funding mechanisms that can happen, especially for site investigations, in order for things to start to kind of roll forward in regards to getting sites cleaned up and stuff. The other thing about that is that where is it going to go? So if it becomes a hazardous waste, if it's got PFOA and PFOS in it, and one of those compounds is a hazardous waste, then it will be limited in the locations where it can go. In fact, I think that's probably only 2 locations in the state of California, and otherwise it's going to go out of state, and of course that's going to cost some money. So the EPA is so there's a lot of unknowns. This whole thing is really new. Well, we've been working on it now probably, for 10, 15 years, but we're still trying to get our arms wrapped around all these compounds. So the EPA should be providing guidance in regards to that as well.
Sobering indeed. Thank you so much, Wendy, for presenting and for all of your work on this really critical item. We'll keep posted, and thank you for your work.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy.
Yeah. All right.
I'm going to try, I'll ask for their presentation to post it on our meeting so we have a record of that. I could see it being referential for different, groups in the future. So
Yeah, and there seemed to be an implication that she'd be available if we wanted, if people had specific follow-up and questions. So we'll definitely be tracking that. And I mean, just also opens up all those issues of environmental justice and equity, and who are the folks who are able to get that clean water and who isn't, and just a lot to this issue. So thank you, and thank you. I think Ray was the one that brought this up as a topic. That was so thanks for bringing that forward. All right, we're going to go ahead and go on to our next item, which is already a favorite of mine, receiving the presentation from the Slow Beaver Brigade regarding the beavers in the county. And I was delighted to be able to go on a field trip to one of their dams, put on some big waders and go out and see what they were up to. And it was really an impressive demonstration of natural systems at play. So thank you to the Beaver Brigade, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm getting access problems.
Brendan, did you authorize Audrey to be able to share screen?
Yeah, Joe, I think Joey's double checking it right now.
Let me see here.
It should be good. Let me try again, Audrey.
Yeah. I think it's actually on my side. Sorry. All right. Let me try it again.
Of course, we know this happens in person as well. This is when we start handing around flash drives.
Yikes, it's totally not working still. Let me see.
Is it
Sorry
a file you could email to?
It is a drive.
Brendan?
It is what it is.
Yeah, yikes. Let's see.
You could try to email it to me if you'd like, and I could run it for you.
Okay. I could do that. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, let's see. All right. Okay, I sent it over. And
Thanks everyone for your patience. Coming through yet on your side, Brendan? No.
There. Oh, no. That was Wendy's presentation. Just came in.
you didn't get it yet?
Nope, not yet. Could be on its way.
Okay, I sent it 2:21.
Well,
Yikes.
maybe I think we have a relatively quick item that maybe we could skip to for considering Dolores Howard as an alternate member for environmental at large. And we did receive an application in the agenda packet if you had a chance to review it, and we'll have Dolores say a word in just a moment, but just as a reminder on the process here is that we will we would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, and the board makes a formal appointment. Dolores, do you want to go ahead and have your moment here to share a little bit about your background and why you're interested in serving in this role?
Yes, thank you, Andy. So hello all, my name is Dolores Howard, and I'm a relative newcomer to San Luis Obispo County. I've only resided here about 5 years. And most of my life I've lived in Santa Barbara County, where I've taught English as second language, Spanish, and translation and interpretation studies, but had kind of a lifelong interest in the environment and nature. And as I approach retirement, I'm kind of moving more towards my interest in the environment, and as climate change makes itself more and more visible. So I've had an interest for some time in water and watersheds, water quality, water conservation. Boy, today's presentation on water quality just floored me. I'm very interested in issues of environmental justice, and although I don't have a scientific or technical background, pretty good learner and good listener, and I love to join this group as an alternate for the environmental at large position, if that works for you all.
Terrific. All right. Any questions from WRAC members? And we do have one vacancy for an environmental at large alternate currently. Any questions, comments that folks want to share? Any?
No one has any questions or comments. I would be happy to make a motion. I was particularly touched by the sense of who she felt she was representing, because it's the other species and the people of the future who are not usually formally represented at the table, and to be able to have advocates, knowledgeable advocates, I think is a very good thing. So I will nominate that we endorse the nomination of Dolores Howard and forward that endorsement to the supervisors.
Thank you, Eric. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Dave Chipping will second.
Dave Chipping will second. Well, that's high praise from our environmental group. So we have a motion and second to recommend Dolores Howard to the Board of Supervisors as an environmental at large alternate. I'm assuming a certain amount of lack of controversy here, so I'm going to assume yes votes, and then giving folks a moment to, if you are opposed, please let me know now, either by speaking up or raising your hand. Any opposed to the recommendation for approval? Any abstentions? We are a supportive crowd here, Dolores. So it does need to go to the Board of Supervisors, and Brendan will keep in touch with you on that. Thank you so much for your interest. It's really important work that we're doing here, and all these volunteers are just critical to the success. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves.
All right, great. And so circling back, whew, that was efficient. How are we doing on Beaver Brigade?
Good, we're good. I think I figured it out. Sorry,
right.
I had to start it and stop it.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And we can see your family too.
I know. Okay, there we go. All right.
All right, looks great.
Sorry
Awesome.
about that.
Thank
All right.
you.
So yeah, I am Audrey Tao with the SLO Beaver Brigade. And we are fiscally sponsored from Eco Logistics. So we have nonprofit status through them. We've been around since 2020, so almost 2 years now. So I wanted to start, oops, I think I missed a slide, but just kind of getting everyone grounded in having an experience at the river or at a creek in your area, is there an image that comes to mind for you when you think of being in a creek or a river here? And just hang on to that until the end. So we're going to start with the history of beavers, and they were pretty much wiped out of North America. There were estimated to be between 60 and 400 million beavers in North America. So that's an estimated 1/10 of the land was considered wetland. And then there was a lot of fur trapping going on until the numbers were down to 100,000 beavers by the early 1900s. And the goal was to create a fur desert to prevent trappers from heading west. And they did a really good job of creating that desert. And in California, they said it was down to about 11 families of beaver living here. In 1942, they did a status of the beaver report, and it prompted some reintroduction efforts. And that's probably where our current beavers are from, being reintroduced at that time. And they were actually dropping beaver from airplanes and parachuting them down pretty successfully. But the result is that there's a belief that they're non-native to this area. And so there's a lot of codes and regulations on removal of beavers. So right now there's a fairly recently in 2013 in California Fish and Game, a new range map of the historical range of beaver for us. And so in our area on the Salinas River, there are beaver on tributaries to the Salinas, Arroyo Grande Creek, Oceano Lagoon. We're planning to do a census survey, citizen science, to gather exactly how many beavers are here in the county. Right now, no one is tracking that. Some basic facts: beavers live in family group. They're kind of like us. They mate for life and have families. There's typically 2 to 8 beavers per family. They typically have 2 to 4 young per year. We've seen 2 each year. They get to about 50 to 80 pounds. They can hold their breath for 15 minutes underwater. And if you see them on the land, they're super awkward. Dr. Emily Fairfax likes to call them walking chicken nuggets. And that is why they build dams, is to keep themselves safe. Because when they're swimming in water, they're super graceful and can get away from predators. More facts about them: they are vegetarians. And I really doubted that until I found their scat, and I pick it apart and it's just like a pile of sawdust. So they really do just eat the bark of willow, cottonwoods, cattails, mule fat, other herbaceous plants in the area. They have webbed feet. They have 2 sets of eyelids so they can see while they're swimming around underwater, and 2 sets of lips so they can hold on to their tree limbs and still swim and not get mouthful of water. They're very social. We have game cameras up in Atascadero, and they spend a lot of time just sitting on their dam and grooming each other and spreading out their oils to make their fur waterproof. And their teeth, you can't really see it in this photo, but they're kind of bright orange, and the enamel has iron in it. So it allows the teeth to wear, but the enamel to stay strong. So it's like a self-sharpening feature. So what do beavers do? Beavers build dams, and this is a picture of a dam in Atascadero. And the dams slow the water down. If you listen, you can always hear a trickle because it never completely stops the water, but it slows it down. And so then the water builds up behind the dam and it spreads out in the landscape, and it allows the water to sink in. Additionally, on the sides of these ponds, they're digging channels to further reach the plants along the river banks. And these channels create more slow water for fish and amphibians. And the vegetation really thrives around these dams, and they create habitat for lots of amphibians and fish and birds. And so they're considered a keystone species. They also, by slowing the water down, it allows the silt and pollutants just to filter to the bottom so that the water downstream is cleaner than the water upstream. And there was a recent study, I don't have the reference, but I could get it, of after a wildfire, the ash that washes into the water is greatly filtered by the dams, and that allows the fish to survive. So in this graphic on the left, we have a kind of a really simple incised stream where there's not much vegetation able to reach down to the water. And on the right is where the beavers are, where they're building dams, allowing the water level to rise to the level of the earth around it. And then they're digging channels out to the sides and creating this very complex system. And this is what we're seeing now after so many years. The beavers can build a long series of dams and making a more complex system. So what that means during a wildfire, this is the Sharps Fire in 2018, Joseph Wheaton of Utah State has captured these images of the beaver complexes after a wildfire. And Dr. Emily Fairfax has studied a series of them. Like, these pictures are not just a fluke. This continually happens during large scale wildfires. They do not penetrate the beaver complexes. They are not able to burn these wet areas. So this allows a place for wildlife to go during wildfires to survive, and also allows the whole area to stay intact. Additionally, they can provide fire breaks to support our firefighters. And what's going on under the surface? On the left, we have a stream without beavers, and on the right, we have a stream with beavers. And we have the top line is showing on like a good rain year, and the bottom is like a drought condition. And in the drought conditions, when you don't have beavers, almost right up to the edge of the river, it's the dry, crispy plants that burn really well. And on a stream with beavers, because they dig so many channels and canals, that it holds the water onto the landscape, allowing the roots to stay alive, and then more plant life to survive. So this is just a photo. On the right is our walk out to the beaver pond. This is taken by Brittany App. And you can see the dry, crispy vegetation. It's probably 100 degrees in August, 6 months after our last rainfall. But when we get to the pond, the picture on the left is at the pond is green and lush and cool and wet. So beavers and climate change, Dr. Emily Fairfax was just telling us this weekend that about how the earth and the soils in the ground, when they're wet, they hold 10 to 12 times more carbon than the dry earth, and how the wetlands are the most efficient ecosystem at absorbing and storing CO2. Additionally, how the beavers help support this is by chewing down the willows. The older trees don't absorb as much carbon as a young growing tree. And what the willow has evolved with the beaver, so that when the willow gets chewed, it immediately sprouts, 10 more small sprouts that grow. And the bark of a willow is bitter to a beaver until it gets thicker, which is about 7 years. So the two have evolved together, so that it's almost like the beavers are farming the willow. And then when the willow gets to a certain height, then they're yummy again, and the beavers come through. And all that is creating this new rapid growth that pulls in a lot of CO2 from the atmosphere, as opposed to an older tree. So the beaver benefits summarized: they're a keystone species, the wildfire refugia. They store water during droughts, and the series of dams helps to slow intensity of floods. The water in the ponds push down and recharge our groundwater. And the filtering action of the dams improves our water quality, and it provides important fish and amphibian habitat and combats climate change. And there are certain obstacles that beavers face. One is being they're rodents, and rodents have such a bad rap. They're really considered a nuisance. So you can get a permit to get beavers off of your land, and then you can take as many beavers as you'd like on those permits. And that does happen. There's a lack of education around beavers. I hear the term beaver fever, that you get giardia from beavers, and it's really not true. If giardia is entered into a stream from, say, a person or cattle, it does reproduce in the gut of a beaver, but it doesn't actually come from the beaver. This idea that dams block the flow of water because they don't ever stop the flow of water. There's always flow either going around or trickling through, and you can listen and hear for that. There's also been studies done of how fish travel upstream. I think the majority of fish go into the channels around, and some actually jump the dams. And then the idea that beavers are non-native, which is not true either. Another obstacle is that it's illegal to relocate beavers in California. So if roads are getting flooded and you don't know what to do with it, and you haven't yet learned about beaver management tools, you can't relocate it. And that's a problem in California. In Oregon, Washington, all these other states have made it legal to relocate them. The pictures are of a beaver dam that got ran over by a Suburban Chevy Suburban got stuck on a beaver dam. Why were they driving in the river is a very, very good question. And then there are invasive species like arundo and this Phragmites species that looks just like arundo, and they just suck a lot of the water and grow really tall, creating a bigger fire hazard. And the beavers don't eat them. So the Slow Beaver Brigade, we are about educating folks about the benefits of beavers. We do a lot of educational walks and take people out into the beaver habitat. We also have restoration projects. Two of the folks have in the Beaver Brigade have learned some methods to mimic a beaver by building what's called a BDA, which is like a human-made beaver dam. We're also supporting scientists' efforts. We have Dr. Emily Fairfax has a continual study out in the beaver dam in Atascadero, and some other scientists have come and joined in. Here they are taking a core sampling just this past weekend of the bottom of a beaver pond, and they're going to be looking at the eDNA and seeing if they can historically tell over time that beavers are living here. And we are river stewards and really learning from the beavers how to steward a river. So this, I won't go through this. This is on our website. This was a preliminary study of the beaver dam in Atascadero, and it's basically showing how even during an intensified drought, beavers can increase riparian areas in an arid region. And you can read about this on our website. I'll try to respect everyone's time here. Let's see, two folks in the Beaver Brigade, Cooper Lionheart and Nick Katowski, received a grant from Biodiversity First, and this is where they learned, these are the BDAs, the human-made beaver dams. And really the goal is beavers stumble upon these human-made beaver dams, and they say, oh my gosh, what a mess, and they take it over. And that's usually the most successful situation, when you can get a beaver to take over the maintenance of the BDA. And Cooper and Nick also traveled up to Washington to learn about beaver trapping, so that whenever relocation becomes legal in this state, they will be prepared. So in this world, we're imagining more beaver. It's also possible to have more conflicts with beaver, where maybe a beaver would be chewing down a tree, your favorite tree, or causing flooding. And the thing is, there are ways to handle all of these potential conflicts. On the East Coast, they've lived with beaver for a much longer period of time. So they've developed incredible tools to manage the effects of beaver on a landscape. So simply wrapping a tree in like chicken wire helps to protect a tree from beaver chews. And additionally, they've created flow devices, so you can actually set the height of a beaver pond. So if we ever get to the situation where we have way too much water and we want to limit the height of the pond, it's very possible to do that. So the River Steward work, we've supported the Equality Mural Project. I hope you've all gotten to see it in Atascadero. This Nature is for Everyone. We really enjoy that image now right through town of the beaver and all the animals that it supports. And then the river cleanups, Kate Montgomery of the Beaver Brigade has been organizing cleanups every month for the past year and a half. And it's just been a wonderful collaboration where the Atascadero Mutual Water Company will let us drive in through their area to pick up the trash. And the Chicago Grade Landfill will take trash from us at no cost. So we've been able to, I forget the count, it's over 1,000 bags of trash from the river. And we recently sent in a sample of the Phragmites reed, and it was declared invasive, unfortunately. So we'll be taking steps there. And we're supporting the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center as an effort for CDFW to change their wording of their code so that landowners would be required to exhaust all non-lethal methods prior to issuing a permit to take a beaver. And this is really just to recognize that the ecosystem benefits of having a beaver on the landscape are larger than maybe the landowner can see. And then we'd want to support relocation of beavers in California. And Fred Collins who recently passed, he was a big supporter. So I put a quote in here. I see that we're running out of time, so I'm going to go really fast. We had a California Beaver Summit in April of last year, and these are some of my favorites. So I put this up here if you want to read what the scientists are doing and what they're studying. These are the best ones. And then what you can do, participate in our beaver data gathering event and get on our newsletter. You can join on one of our river cleanups. And once legislation is submitted to legalize pilot beaver relocation projects, it'd be great to support that. And then supporting the code change for CDFW. And there's our website. And then I just wanted to recall your opening reflection on a beaver on a stream or a creek. And just think about, well, do you see, what is the potential that you see now for our rivers, and has that changed? And then this is just, I won't play it, but it's this is the beaver pond in Atascadero. And with that, I'll just stop it right there.
So amazing. Excellent. Thank you so much, Audrey. We are running out of time, but Ray asked the question on my mind as well. Are beavers observed in other SLO County creeks, or is kind of Atascadero our known location right now?
Yeah, it's all along the Salinas. There are in Arroyo Grande Creek, and we really there's not a lot known. So we're hoping to walk walk a lot of the creeks and rivers just to really know where they are active right now.
Awesome. Any other pressing questions?
I
Christine?
have a comment. Yes, hello. I'm sorry I missed the earlier part. But I would like to just comment that Zone 9 for years has contracted with the Nature Conservancy for arundo removal in the entire watershed of the San Luis Obispo Creek. And when the speaker just mentioned arundo, that caught my imagination that perhaps they might like to speak with them and see if there's any way that they can work together for those invasive species removals.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. In Atascadero, we have just a very small amount of arundo. Paso has more for sure. And this Phragmites is actually a bigger concern in our area. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody, anything else?
If I might, thank you, Audrey, for that presentation. It was very educational and I enjoyed it very much. And it seems to me that your attempts are to learn how to live in coexistence with the beaver, and they can teach us a lot. And they're just fascinating creatures, and I'm glad someone's involved in saving them. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank you as well. And you were talking about the potential for legislation to be introduced. I'm not aware that it has been introduced in this legislative session, but that there might be actual in-house changes in the Department of Fish and Wildlife as a sort of an interim measure. Are there ways we can support those?
Yeah. And my understanding is the legislation or the change in the code is still sitting on the commissioners, the Fish and Game commissioners' desks. So I'm not exactly sure how to get that moving.
Right. It has not been introduced into the state legislature as legislation. And normally legislation to be acted on in a calendar year would have been introduced by now. But I think I understand there are ways that the internal workings can be tweaked even without legislation based on existing law. And so that could be an area for research. When there is legislation, I would propose a future agenda item at which we might urge the board to take a position on that legislation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, that that this group, I think that it is important to our community and to a lot of goals. And as we think about our groundwater and fire risk, et cetera, there's a lot of relevancy. So please do keep in touch, Audrey, and let us know if we can support or nudge or provide any of those other kinds of support for this important work.
Thank you. Yes.
Great. Anything else before we move on? All right. Home stretch here as we finish up. So ongoing updates just in terms of the agenda, we're just consistently moving that towards the end of the meeting so that we put kind of the main stuff at the beginning. I think everything was written in there. Usually I kind of go down through each line item one at a time, but I'm just going to take them all as en masse. So if anybody has any comments or questions about the ongoing updates, rain and reservoir report, California drought monitor summary, groundwater basin management efforts, IRWM, or other various county programs, open reporting, et cetera. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to make? David Chipping.
Yeah, it's a question in regard to the stipulated agreement down in Nipomo that staff could help me out on. Seeing that we're plunging into a major drought, I looked at the conditions for sort of going into an emergency, and they require a number of things. There are 4 things: chronic declining groundwater levels over a period of not less than 5 years, groundwater levels below lowest recorded levels, groundwater level decline and not caused by drought, red flag, a material increase in groundwater use during the 5-year period. So it appears that the city of Santa Maria and the Pomo and the basin cannot react to the stipulated agreement, because if it was caused by drought, it would not fulfill the requirements for doing something urgently. In other words, going into the severe condition. So if staff could find a way of answering that one for the next session, I'd be much obliged. Thank you.
Brendan, to that, is that
Yeah,
clear? Or, oh, Blaine.
I think I'll defer to Blaine.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Brendan. And thank you, David. Yes, that's a very good question. And I don't know the answer to that at the moment, but I will be in a position to respond to that at your next meeting.
Thank you.
Great.
And I would also ask Blaine, just out of curiosity, is there another venue more specific to the Mesa, the Santa Maria Basin, where maybe that's, like, is this going to be discussed in a area specific meeting at some point? Or just thought I'd ask, and I know like most of our basin managements have other, specific context for, meetings and things like that.
Yeah, there is the Pomo Mesa management area has a committee, and that might be another venue to respond to that question. But I'm happy to also bring back to this group a response to that question and more information.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Christine, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you. And my comment actually was more intended for future agenda items, but I think it plays into this because it was just mentioned, perhaps there'd be more information next time. As an advisory body, I'm wanting to suggest that it may be time that we take on an agenda item for discussion that would be a very sticky wicket, and that is about moratorium, various moratoria. Given that we are in climate change, we seem to be having more experts say we're in constant long-term drought with a few good years here and there. Our groundwater basins are far from being balanced, and we have more and more building, including in the city, that looks at building out 15 years earlier than the general plan was recommending. And with this huge amount of pressure for development, I know it steps on a lot of toes, but I think it's something that we should talk about, at least as a discussion item. When do we really start to say, okay, enough growth and building until we can balance our resource management basis in a better manner? Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Christine, for the suggestion. Obviously we're in so many different water circumstances as all of our different entities that I think being able to talk about drought and drought response and what are some options. I don't think moratorium should be off the table just because it's a sticky wicket. But it, may or may not apply to, we're all in different positions and having our own responses to what that looks like. But we are certainly planning for more drought response and hearing from folks on ideas. And, anyway, those are some first thoughts. But of course, as a body, you all influence the agenda. So I'm going to hold that thought for just a sec and make sure. Are there any other questions or comments on the ongoing updates? Otherwise, we're transitioning to the future agendas item.
And Andy, just real quick, the next drought update is going to the board on March 15th. So that's where the next update will be, and wanted just to let everyone know if they're interested in hearing what's going on. And obviously it's in the future, but I think it's to keep the declaration open. That's and so just if anyone's interested on that discussion, and, that'll be on March 15th. So
Okay.
that's, I don't know what time yet or anything, but, it'll be published on the agenda next week, and we can see where it lines up.
Yeah, Brendan, would you mind sending that out to our members so that they can have that once it comes out, have that available to.
Yeah, I'll make
to
a note
listen in
for
on?
it. I'll make a note, otherwise I'll forget. So,
Yeah.
yes, nope, okay.
That could be an occasion for members of the public to raise the moratorium issue. And as I understand it, such declarations keep coming back every 60 days until the drought is over. In addition, I'd like to ask, do we have an intended time frame for the next consideration of the update on the resource management system, which could include level of 3 severity findings that could potentially lead to moratoria in selected area? Obviously, it doesn't cover all of the county. Places like the Adelaide area don't get its attention, for example, but some areas that are seriously impacted will be considered. Do we know when that's likely to come around?
I think the short answer specific to the RMS is no. I don't believe the planning department's on the call, so my best understanding is right now there's not a like a specific RMS replacement on the table. However, we've discussed our master water report update and our data management system update we're making for water, which is, at least for the water component of the RMS, is the key, foundation there and the key data provider for the water RMS. And so I'd say, in order for that RMS to reflect the latest and current conditions, the planning department needs the latest and current conditions from us, and us being Public Works Water Resources. And so that's what our project is doing. So I think, Eric, this is going to be a multi-year project for us, and then the planning department would pick up their piece once we're giving them that up-to-date information and have that in place. So educated guess, a couple years, but the work is starting with what we're doing with the master water report update.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So looking ahead to what we already have planned for the agenda at this point, we are planning on being back in person at our next meeting. In doing our agenda planning, we are also wanting to make sure that these meetings are substantive in the materials that's being covered. So we have the budget to go over, but that won't be ready until May. And then there are some other potential items that we are looking at. So our current plan is to not meet in April, and then to meet in person in May, and likely in June as well. So if you can at least hold the April meeting on your calendars for a little bit in case something comes up in the next couple of weeks, but otherwise we'll confirm cancellation of the April meeting and plan to all be in person on the May meeting. And then by then we'll also have a little bit better understanding if folks, if we can take public comment remotely, which is I think a lot of what the other bodies are going to be trying to do, is have the voting board members all be in person and the public be able to comment either in person or remotely. Or maybe there'll be other options going forward. So yeah, so those are so we are looking at an IRWM projects update presentation. We are looking at an update to the water report that should be in May or June as a consultant is selected, and will kind of be working with us and providing updates over their project. And also looking just at other drought recovery, drought response kinds of items. Anything else, Brendan, that we want to highlight off of that?
I do think the last I had talked with Creeklands with Steph Wald, they would be ready to,
Oh, right.
you know, they were targeting the spring for their, you know, pilot groundwater project they were working on. So we'd perhaps have an update from them as well. And so I did reach out to Steph last month, but on a pinger again. So it's possible we could have that this spring also.
And we had, it probably would have been this meeting to elect a new chair and vice chair. And I apologize, I forgot to agendize it, and you know, you have to have things on the agenda. So that'll roll over to the next time. So hopefully there's no coups in the meantime for the WRAC leadership spot. All right. And Christine will add to the list, you know, moratoriums, and see if you have either speaker ideas or otherwise. I think within the context of drought response, we'll kind of keep that in the toolbox, because clearly that is the plan in some areas, certainly, depending on what level you get to. Anything else on future agenda items?
Just to repeat the hope that we can use the slow city hall. If COVID is still around, the better cross ventilation in that venue would seem to be a healthier alternative, with the windows open and the doors open.
Right.
Much easier to ventilate than the library room, and I think would help some people achieve a better comfort level with being in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah.
And I will, that's definitely one of the room options, and I appreciate your comment there. I'm definitely thinking more from the tech side, but I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. So
right.
I don't take that. I definitely will take it into consideration. So just want to say thanks for sharing.
Right. And there could be some options there at the library as well to have some better air changes.
Yeah, the library, frankly, not the best tech setup. So it's all part of trying to figure it out. So
right. Okay, good. So I hope targeting May for that one. All right, and then public comment for items not on the agenda. So this could be either members or members of the public. Does anybody have anything that they want to comment on within the WRAC purview? Nobody? All right. Great. Well, with that, I think we can go ahead and adjourn this meeting. And our next meeting, again, likely canceling the April 6th meeting and meeting in May, which is, I don't know offhand.
May 4th. May the 4th be with us.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you. Goodbye.